Hey guys, welcome to the recap show. Today's movie recap will cover a 2019 horror movie named Ready or Not. Sit back, grab a drink, and enjoy. In this horror movie's first scene, a flashback into the early years of a young boy named Alex and his older brother Daniel is shown. That fateful night, Alex and his brother run through their large family mansion, hiding from a silhouette. When they reach an opening, Daniel hides his scared brother and faces his aunt's husband at the time, Charles. Charles is running away from the other members of the family doing a hide and seek game. When he comes in contact with Daniel, who he begs not to reveal his location, Daniel defaults and tells the others where he was. Upon realizing his location, masked people arrive and shoot arrows into Charles. Helene, Charles' wife, cries tearfully as her husband is pulled away from her to face his demise. Just as the flashback ends, the present day showcases Grace, Alex's wife, talking to herself when her husband interrupts her moment alone. The two discuss like couples do, and are interrupted yet again by Daniel, who teases his little brother playfully and advises Grace to leave the family while she still could. Little did she know that Daniel was doing her a favor. Grace politely ignores her brother in law and kisses her husband to be. In the next scene, Grace smiles for the camera as she takes a personal photo for the family. After getting her shot taken, others join in to get photographed. Soon enough, the entire family gets their photos taken in twos and threes. While the photo shoot goes on, Becky, Alex's mother, meets with her daughter in law and cheers her up. After lifting up Grace's spirits, everyone gets to the ceremony of the day. By nightfall, Alex and his wife arrive back at the mansion a bit drunk. Grace is about to get down to business with her husband when Aunt Helene boldly interrupts them. This startles the couple as Helene instructs Alex to bring his wife to the round table. Alex stops his act and explains the weird game Grace was to participate in so she gets accepted into the family. Grace preps herself and goes downstairs without Alex. When she gets downstairs, Grace checks out the amazing mansion and its glamour. When she gets to the living room, Becky greets her warmly and even offers her champagne. Grace smiles and explains her story to Becky, who nods in pity. Alex notices his mother talking to his wife and quickly rushes to take Grace away. As he discusses with her, Fitch Bradley and his wife, Amelie, with their two kids, rush into the living room. Fitch welcomes Grace in his own way and chats a bit with Alex. Amelia walks in as well and chit-chats with Grace. Amidst all the chit-chatting, the family butler announces the time to be 11:55. Knowing the hour was at hand, the entire family usher themselves into another room decorated with antiques and paintings. After settling around the table, Tony, the father of the house, tells the newcomer about the family's history. Apparently, their great-grandfather made a deal with a man named LaBelle to acquire as much wealth as he could in exchange for the grandfather's possession of a box, which could be used to initiate new members into the Ladomus family. To initiate the newcomer, the person had to choose a card from the box and play any game written there. After explaining the what's in house to Grace, he gives Grace the box to choose a card. Unfortunately, she chooses the one bad card in the entire deck. The next course of events would explain why choosing the hide and seek card is not something one should wish for with the Ladomus family. After choosing the hide and seek card, Alex gives his wife the look of disappointment. Grace chuckles and is urged by Tony to go hide as they prepare for the game over a music box playing the countdown. While Grace hides in an opening in the corridor, Tony hands over weapons to each family member. When the music finishes playing, the entire family members start their search to terminate Grace. In the meantime, Becky comforts her son, who's already devastated over what's about to happen. This doesn't last long as Alex makes his resolve to save his wife no matter what. He rushes to his secret room to find his wife. Elsewhere, Fitch excuses himself to learn how to shoot a crossbow. Grace, on the other hand, gets out of her hiding place and walks through the corridor. As she walks through, she hears someone in the distance looking for one of Amelia and Fitch's kids, Georgie. Thankfully, before Grace is seen, Alex catches her and hides her out of sight. Before she could say anything, Clara, the maid, walks into a door besides Alex and Grace and gets shot in the head. Just then, Amelia rushes forward, thinking she just eliminated Grace. When everyone rushes in, they find out it's only Clara and get rid of the body. After they all leave, Alex pulls a downtrodden Grace back to life. He explains the entire situation to Grace and urges her to leave the mansion with him. After a change of room and shoes, Alex finally explains that something bad would happen to the family if they don't terminate Grace before dawn. Alex tells Grace to get to the kitchen and wait for him to unlock the door so she can get out. Grace listens to her man and walks as fast and silently as she could to the kitchen. Unfortunately for her, though, she runs into Tony and two others. Before they could reach her, however, Amelia appears on the other end and randomly shoots into the air, buying Grace enough time to escape into another room. There, she tries calling for help, with no luck. A moment later, Daniel walks in. With a look of devastation in his eyes, he pours himself a drink and gives Grace a head start before he calls the others. When he eventually calls the others, his wife, Charity, approaches the study where he was and chastises him for getting tired of the game. Daniel shuns his wife, reminding her of her gold digging characteristics. Seconds later, everyone rushes inside. Tony heaves a sigh of disappointment when he hears Grace is out of sight. As they complain, Amelia exclaims that she left her gun in the corridor. Just then, Fitch offers her his crossbow to use. After handing it over to her, Amelia mistakenly shoots another one of their maids. Everyone sighs over Amelia's mistake, and Helene cleans things up. Realizing the situation they were now in, Tony freaks out but is calmed down by his wife Becky. Soon, Tony argues with Helene that they need to activate the cameras to find Grace quickly. Meanwhile, Grace manages to get her hands on a sawed-off shotgun. Alex, on the other hand, finally makes it to the control room. Grace, who's already in the kitchen, ducks out of sight when the butler waltzes in to have a cup of tea. Almost immediately, there's a cross scene showing Alex pulling up levers and keys in the control room, while Grace keeps shifting out of the butler's sight. In hiding, Grace reloads the shotgun in her hand and makes a little noise. Thankfully, the butler is none the wiser as he keeps singing melodies. When Alex finally unlocks the doors, Grace stands up and holds the butler at gunpoint. Unfortunately, the gun doesn't shoot. To compensate for this loss, Grace throws the kettle filled with boiling water at the butler and runs away. Tony and Daniel finally break into the control room. When they do, Tony rushes to Alex and nearly gets himself killed in the process. When the tables turn, Alex gets knocked out instead, with Tony and Daniel hauling him out. Back at Grace's, she meets up with another family member who's stuck in the elevator. Things don't go well for the member as she gets crushed after accidentally activating the elevator. A little while later, Alex is tied up with the others hovering around him, arguing. Grace stands at a window outside the room and close to the roof where she listens in on Tony and Helene's argument. Seconds later, they leave Alex with Fitch, who chats with his friends. Grace uses this chance and falls down into the garden. She runs through the compound to the stables where she hides from sight after hearing footsteps. Upon finding out who the imposter was, little Georgie, she reveals herself to him. Georgie, who is holding a gun, shoots Grace's hand. She lets out a painful cry and knocks out the little guy. Grace then picks the torch, but falls into a trapdoor after being startled by an animal. Now in the pit, Grace finds remains of former spouses who picked the bad card. With her injured hand, Grace finds a ladder, climbs all the way up, and walks to the yard. Charity sees Grace running through the yard and tries to take a shot at her. Thankfully, she misses and lets the others know where the victim was. Grace manages to reach the compound's metal fence. She squeezes herself through the thin orifice and gets out of the compound. Now outside, she tries to hail an oncoming car. Bad for her, the driver shuns her off. Now seeing her captors approaching, Grace runs out of sight. Elsewhere, Daniel gets chastised for being so nonchalant about the game, seeing as their lives were at stake. Eventually, Tony reconditions everyone to keep up the good search. In the courtyard, Grace sees the butler's car approaching her and stopping. Alex, who's still tied up inside, struggles to free himself. At that moment, the butler steps out and starts his search, while Daniel and Amelie throw the maid's body into the pit. After disposing of the body, Daniel lets Amelie know that they all deserve to die for all of their sins. Amelie begs to differ, saying that her kids don't deserve such treatment. A little while into the night, the butcher catches up to Grace and engages her in a brawl. Grace defends herself and almost strangles the butler to extinction. Once the butler stops moving, Grace gets up and enters his car. Inside, she turns on the electronic help system and informs the operator to help her out. However, the operator explains that the car was reported to be stolen, so he has to shut it down. Almost immediately, the car shuts down in the middle of the road. Before she knows it, the butler attacks her with a tranquilizer dart and knocks her out. When Grace comes to, she finds the butler taking her back to the home. The butler phones in his progress on a video call and celebrates it with loud opera music. His victory is short-lived, as Grace kicks him till he steers off the road and into a ditch. After the accident, Grace crawls out of the car and sees Daniel, who knocks her out. Upon doing so, he urges Tony to come out of his hiding place to help him carry her back home. In the next scene, Becky tries sweet-talking her son into understanding why they did what they did. Alex counters her mother by telling her Grace was the only person who reminded him of humanity. Seeing as things were going nowhere, Becky leaves him and gathers the children to explain the situation at hand. Meanwhile, the others prepare themselves for the termination ritual. When all's been done, Grace wakes up to the Ladome family members wearing masks and drinking some fluid as they chant some incantations with her as a sacrifice. She screams as loud as she could but is stopped midway. Luckily for her, before Tony could take her out, the acid Daniel poured into the drink they all drank kicked in. Soon enough, those who took a sip of the drink started spitting out blood. Daniel quickly unties Grace and carries her through the corridor. They both nearly escape the house when Charity holds them at gunpoint. Daniel shields Grace and tries to talk to his wife but gets shot at by Charity. Seeing this, Grace knocks her and Tony out before running into the house. Alex finally frees himself and sees his brother take his last breath. In one of the living rooms, Grace is confronted by Becky, who she takes out completely in front of Alex, who stares at his wife in surprise. When he moves closer to Grace, he realizes he's lost his wife. This makes him switch to his family's side as he holds Grace and straps her to a table. Realizing the sun's already on its way out, everyone holds Grace down to perform the ritual. Smart Grace pinches Helene's hand and takes a stab on her shoulder instead of her heart. She winces in pain and retrieves the knife. As the family recoil in shock, Helene realizes it's already sunrise. She pulls open the curtains and begs for forgiveness from LaBelle. Most of the family members duck out of sight as if they were expecting to meet some demise. Nothing happens, and they all start heaving sighs of relief. However, Helene still had intentions to terminate Grace as she picks up her axe to take out Grace. Before she gets to Grace, she bursts into a pool of blood. The same happens to the other members of the family. When it reaches Alex's turn, he tries to beg Grace into staying with him so he doesn't die with them. Grace leaves him nonetheless and watches him burst like the others. With the Ladome mansion now in flames, Grace walks out of the front porch, victorious over her enemies. The movie ends as Grace smokes with cops running all over the place. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to receive future recaps.